sticking it out there on the treadmill when it gets boring, when it gets a bit tough, when I get really hot and sweaty. It's almost like I think of it as mental training. It's building mental toughness. So good morning, welcome back to the channel. Today I have been kindly sent some shoes from Altra. Altra are a zero drop running shoe company. I've never actually tried them before, and I've received both the carbon racing version and the new max cushion via Olympus. I've got an hour easy run planned in my marathon training. Unfortunately the weather today is absolutely disgusting. It's tipping it down with rain. And I'm one of those people that if it's raining, I'd much rather just go down to the treadmill, put on a podcast, and just, yeah, get the work done. So yeah, I'm going to be trying out the Via Olympus today. It will be I'll give a first run impression. This is a max cushioned shoe from Altra. In fact, the highest amount of cushioning that I think they'd ever put in a shoe. So it'd be good to try this one out. It's got an Ego Max midsole, which is a new midsole from Altra, but it will be all new to me, having never run in this shoe company before. In terms of the fit, it's a traditional Altra fit, the original fit, which basically means that this shoe has a lot of width to it and plenty of room in the toe box for your feet to spread out. One of Altra's sort of unique selling points is it's like fitting to the natural sort of specifications of a foot. It's been designed that way. As you can see, it's a lot wider in both the heel and the forefoot than most running shoes that I usually try. So this shoe has 33mm of stack height in the heel and the same 33mm in the forefoot. So it's quite easy to remember in terms of the stats. But yeah, I'm going to go down to the treadmill, give this a try this morning, and give you my first impressions of running in a zero drop shoe. So I'm just about to head down to the gym. One of my favourite podcasts I'm listening to at the moment is called Coffee Club by the OAC boys, the On Athletics Club. It's basically for professional runners that live in America that run for On Running, and they just talk about their training, get some pretty cool guests on there, and it's one of my favourites. Recently listened to the Emma Bates one, and as she builds up to the New York City Marathon, and listening to some of the miles she runs was yeah, pretty inspiring. So I'm going to head down to the gym now, get that on in my ears. That's one of my top tips for treadmill running, is find a good podcast, and you can literally just zone out. So I've got an hour easy and then an hour-ish easy as well tonight for another double day in the road to Valencia. Woo, not long now. So there we go, an hour exactly banked, 8.5 miles at 7 minute per mile pace. The good thing about the treadmill for me is it's set in miles, and I typically run in kilometers, so I have no idea how far I've ran really relative to to normal. But yeah, happy to get that first run in the Altras. I'll give you some first impressions now while I'm back to the car. Before I jump into that, I just thought I would talk a little bit about treadmill running. It's something I do quite a lot, and especially now the weather's sort of turning, the evenings are getting darker, I tend to find myself going down to the gym, jumping on the treadmill a lot more often. Mainly for injury prevention actually. Last year I took a tumble on a tree root when I was out running in the dark, despite having a head torch on, and yeah, bruised my hip and it gave me pain for like 3 months. So I've sort of ever since then been put off running outside in the dark, and that's just my personal preference. So I had to learn to use the treadmill as part of in my training. So I do easy runs on there, I do sessions on there that I adapt slightly, and I really have enjoyed training on the treadmill, which I know is quite an alien thing to say for a lot of people. A lot of people hate the treadmill, so I thought I'd come up with some tips to running on a treadmill while I was on there today, and a few things I've written down here is get a good podcast, run to time rather than a pace. So today I was running an hour easy, so I knew once I hit an hour on the treadmill I could jump off. In terms of the display on the treadmill, you want to turn everything off. So I like to have it basically not showing how far I've gone or how much time has elapsed, and it allows me just to completely zone off, focus on my podcast. Another thing that really helps me on the treadmill is to turn my lap pace off on the watch. So don't worry about every kilometre looking at your watch, just zone. If you're going to use a watch on a treadmill, make sure you turn it off. Another thing I like to do when I'm on the treadmill is to think of it as mental training. Now, I find it quite easy to go out for a run and run for an hour. Going for an hour run on the treadmill I find quite difficult in terms of mentally just keeping going. You could just step off and then yeah, no one's gonna know that you've stopped your run basically early. But I like to think of it as mental training. I'm currently training for a marathon, so for me, sticking it out there on the treadmill when it gets boring, when it gets a bit tough, when I get really hot and sweaty, it's almost like I think of it as mental training. It's building mental toughness so that when it comes to race day and things get tough, I can push on. But yeah, that's a little bit about treadmill running, why I like it so much. I think some of the best runners in the world use treadmills. I know Jakob Ingebrigtsen uses it for his interval stuff, so if they can do it and they can benefit from it, then I would encourage giving it a go. I know it's not always the most enjoyable type of running, but it gets the job done, and especially if you've got a goal in mind, a treadmill is a great tool to have. So anyway, let's jump into the Altra Via Olympus. My first time ever running in a zero drop shoe, and it was pretty interesting. I was a little bit cautious, to be honest with you, to running in a zero drop shoe. A few people had said to me via Instagram when I posted the pictures up of me that I was going to be testing them, basically saying just be careful, they use a lot of different muscles when you run in them, and if you use them too much, if you go from, I don't know, a shoe that's got an 8mm drop into a zero drop shoe and do all your running in it, then it can lead to some injuries. But I didn't really find any issues today. I didn't have any knee pain. I was keeping check on things. I wasn't feeling any different. So to wrap up my first impressions, I thought I'd give you some likes and dislikes of the Altra Via Olympus. So my likes were, it felt very natural on foot. There's a lot of room in the toe box, which I'm not used to having in shoes, which allowed my toes to spread out, and it felt very natural when running, very comfortable. I found the shoe to be very stable. It's got a very wide landing platform, and I think because it is zero drop, it adds to the stability aspect of this shoe. And the foam is actually, I'd say it's closer to the firm side of the spectrum than soft, which also helps with stability. So yeah, I found it a very natural, comfortable, stable ride, which is exactly what you want, especially in an easy sort of recovery run shoe. Another thing I liked about the Ultra is I think it's going to be a good shoe to add into my rotation. As I was saying, it uses slightly different muscles because it is a zero drop. It takes a little bit less pressure off things like the Achilles and calves. So I think it's going to be good to add into my rotation. It's going to work slightly different muscles, which is only going to strengthen me as a runner. I think this shoe for me will be an out and out easy day shoe, recovery day shoe when I want to protect the legs a little bit. It didn't really give me much in terms of wanting to go faster, but it felt very comfortable. I could sort of run at that easy pace for at least 2 hours in this shoe with no problems at all, and I could tell that from the first run. And finally, some dislikes. I found with the Altra, I don't know if it was just this shoe or zero drop shoes in general, but I found that I was landing very much on top of the shoe. It didn't feel like it was propelling me forward at all, but then that would make sense. It's got a completely zero drop, so there's not going to be any sort of forcing you onto your toes in Altra, and I guess that's something I would have to get used to if I was going to use these shoes more full-time, more permanently. And my final dislike was the midsole. It was very stable, and it offered a lot of protection from the ground, which I think is going to be good. It's going to appeal to a lot of people that are maybe looking to protect their legs, their hips, their knees, that sort of thing, but it didn't really have any propulsiveness, responsiveness. It was sort of giving me any assistance. It felt like I was landing on the foam. The foam was nice and stable, but it wasn't offering me any assistance that, say, I don't know, other shoes can. For example, the Nova Blast 3, it's a really bouncy ride and it really feels like it gets you up into your toes and pushes you forward. Whereas the Altra, you land on the shoe, the midsole softens the impact, but it doesn't really do any more than that. I'm excited to try the carbon version of the Altra, see what the zero drop feels like at faster speed, but today, on the treadmill, the Altra performed really well, and overall I think it will go into my shoe rotation for easy and recovery runs. Probably once or twice a week I'll use this shoe. But yeah, that's my first impressions review of the Altra Via Olympus. Expect a full review after I've put some more runs. Obviously today I've only ran 8.5 miles. So take with my opinions with a pinch of salt. Thank you very much to Altra for sending these over to me to try. It was a good experience running in the zero drop, new experience, and definitely something I will be doing a bit more of in my training. But until next time, aspire to run, run to inspire, and we'll see you again soon.